tens of thousands of pounds per week to China, and that went to almost zero.
Live Canadian lobsters are on the move, destined for Asia in volumes no one has seen before.
The American lobster industry faces its most devastating crisis in generations, as Canada has effectively seized control of global markets, leaving Maine's once thriving fishing communities in economic ruins. What began as a trade dispute has evolved into a complete market takeover, with Canadian lobsters now dominating international sales, while American catch rots on docks. The collapse traces back to the escalating trade war between Washington and Beijing, where lobsters became unexpected casualties in a larger economic battle. China, previously importing tens of thousands of pounds of American lobster weekly, reduced purchases to nearly zero as tariffs made imports prohibitively expensive. Meanwhile, Canada capitalized on this opportunity, increasing their lobster exports to China by 40% in just 6 months during 2019. Canadian boats began sailing away with contracts that once belonged to American fishermen, leaving Maine's proud maritime tradition in shambles. The shift happened almost overnight as buyers in Shanghai and Guangzhou redirected their orders across the border. High-end Chinese banquets that once featured Maine lobster switched to Canadian suppliers, while American lobsters sat in storage crates with nowhere to go. The real devastation came when Canada secured the comprehensive economic and trade agreement with the European Union. This masterstroke gave Canadian lobsters tariff-free access to Europe's luxury seafood markets, while American lobsters faced tariffs up to 8%. Though this percentage seems modest, it proved crushing for bulk deals worth millions of dollars. European chefs, wholesalers, and distributors quickly calculated the economics. Canadian lobsters arrived cheaper, fresher, and without additional fees. French restaurants that had proudly served Maine lobster for decades switched suppliers without hesitation. German wholesalers who previously split orders between Boston and Halifax eliminated Boston entirely from their purchasing agreements. Maine lost Europe completely as Canadian exports surged, and their boats secured bookings months in advance. Nova Scotia and New Brunswick dominated restaurant menus across the continent, while Maine fishermen watched helplessly as their heritage crumbled. The industry's collapse wasn't due to ocean conditions or lobster populations, but purely political maneuvering and trade negotiations. For Maine's lobstering families, this represents more than economic hardship. Lobstering has defined coastal communities for generations, creating cultural identity and family traditions passed down through decades. Fishermen who survived countless storms and market fluctuations found themselves defeated not at sea, but in boardrooms thousands of miles away. Canada then expanded their dominance by joining major Pacific trade agreements, securing privileged access to Japan, Vietnam, and Malaysia. In Asian markets, lobster represents far more than seafood. It symbolizes status, wealth, and respect, making it essential for weddings, business celebrations, and demonstrations of success. Cities like Tokyo, Beijing, and Ho Chi Minh treat lobster as luxury statements rather than simple meals. Canada recognized this cultural significance and positioned themselves perfectly to serve these markets while American lobsters faced continued tariff barriers. Asian restaurants, hotels, and wholesalers eagerly purchased Canadian supplies, while Maine's catch remained idle. By 2023, the market statistics revealed the complete scope of America's defeat. Canada controlled 76% of China's live lobster market, while the United States managed just 25%. The nation that once dominated global lobster exports had been reduced to a minor player in the world's largest seafood market. The financial numbers paint an even starker picture. Canada's lobster exports reached $326 billion by 2021, representing 37% of their entire seafood export industry. Lobster became their maritime crown jewel, while the United States limped along with just $459 million in exports, less than $500 million compared to Canada's empire. Maine lobstermen didn't need complex analysis to understand their situation. Empty docks and absent buyers told the complete story. The tragedy wasn't about product quality, as chefs worldwide acknowledged that Maine and Nova Scotia lobsters are virtually identical in taste and quality. The difference lay entirely in trade agreements and political strategy. Canada wielded international agreements like precision weapons, while America entered negotiations unprepared. Politicians eventually recognized the crisis, with Donald Trump making Maine a campaign focus. However, despite tough rhetoric and promises, European tariffs remained unchanged. Contracts stayed with Canadian suppliers, and Maine's exports continued declining. Washington then shifted tactics from economic pressure to environmental concerns, accusing Canadian fisheries of threatening endangered North Atlantic right whales. With only 350 of these whales remaining, the accusation seemed noble, but critics viewed it as disguised protectionism designed to penalize Canada without obvious tariffs. Ottawa responded aggressively, branding Canadian lobster as environmentally friendly and whale-safe. They transformed the conflict from economic competition to moral positioning, making Canadian products appear cleaner and more ethical than American alternatives. This marketing strategy proved devastatingly effective in international markets. Senator Susan Collins eventually secured an $80 million subsidy package to support struggling lobstermen, but this represented admission of defeat rather than victory. The once self-sufficient American lobster industry now depends on government support, while Canada continues expanding their global market share. The collapse demonstrates how quickly established industries can crumble when political strategy trumps traditional advantages. Maine's maritime expertise, generational knowledge, and product quality became irrelevant when faced with superior trade negotiations and international agreements. Today's reality finds American lobster families hanging by financial threads, while Canadian competitors sail away with billion-dollar contracts. What was once America's proud maritime heritage has been reduced to political symbolism and government subsidies, a cautionary tale about the power of international trade agreements in modern global commerce.